Okay, imagine this for a second. What if I told you there was a civilization that thrived for thousands of years, built these incredible cities, way more advanced than a lot of places today, and then, poof, they just vanished? They left behind a language we still can't read, and a mystery that, honestly, we still can't solve. Today, we're diving into the great unsolved puzzles of the Indus Valley Civilization. So our story doesn't start with some famous archaeologist digging in the dirt. Nope. It kicks off with a deserter, a guy named James Lewis who was just completely fed up with the British East India Company and decided to make a run for it. He changed his name, and because he loved to travel, he just took off across the Indian subcontinent. And then 2 years into his journey in 1829, he literally stumbles upon the ruins of this huge ancient city. Now, he had no idea what he'd found, but he took amazing notes. It would take a whole century, though, until the 1920s, for archaeologists led by John Marshall to finally start digging and realize the true scale of what Lewis had found, the lost city of Harappa. And what they uncovered, wow, it was nothing short of a lost world. This wasn't just some small settlement. They had found the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the world's very first great urban cultures, right up there with ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. We're talking about the big leagues. And when I say old, I mean it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around how old. For a long time, we thought it was about 5,000 years old, which is already amazing. But a 2016 study suggests it could be as ancient as 8,000 years. That means it could actually be older than the Egyptian pharaohs. Just think about that. But here's the thing. For everything we've learned about their incredible cities and just how long they were around, two huge, fundamental mysteries are sitting right at the heart of the civilization. And these are puzzles that still have historians just scratching their heads. Okay, so puzzle number one, their language. They left behind this incredibly complex written script that is totally silent. We cannot read a single word of it. And puzzle number two, their sudden end. After thousands of years of success, these millions of people and their entire civilization just disappeared. So let's tackle that first puzzle. Let's play detective for a minute. How on earth do you crack a code that's been silent for thousands of years? All right, so to crack any code, you got to look at the clues, right? Here's what we've got. Archaeologists have found over 4,000 different artifacts with this writing on them. The script itself is a beast. It has over 400 unique symbols. I mean, we only have 26 letters in our alphabet. And most of these clues are found on these tiny little stone seals, usually with an animal on them. The most common one being this really cool unicorn-like creature. Okay, so we can't read the words, but you'd think we could at least figure out which direction they wrote in, right? Like left to right, like we do in English, or right to left, like Arabic. What do you think? Well, the clue is actually really human. It's kind of funny. On a lot of these seals, you can see that as the writer was running out of space, the symbols on the left-hand side get all squeezed together. It's basically the ancient version of trying to cram the end of a word onto the edge of your paper. So that tells us they started on the right and finished on the left. Pretty clever, huh? You know, the only reason we can read Egyptian hieroglyphs is because of the famous Rosetta Stone. It was the ultimate cheat sheet. It had the same exact text written in the script nobody could read, the hieroglyphs, and one they could read, ancient Greek. It was like an ancient Google Translate. And that, right there, is the big problem, the massive roadblock. For the Indus script, we've never found anything like a Rosetta Stone. There's no translation key. It's like someone handing you a whole library of books in a language you've never seen before and just saying, good luck. It's almost impossible. But then, just when things seemed hopeless, a breakthrough came from a totally unexpected place, Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq. Archaeologists found Indus seals way over there, which proves they were trading. But these seals had something weird on them. A jar-shaped symbol, which never ever repeats on seals found back in the Indus Valley, was here found repeated back to back. This tiny detail led to this brilliant theory. What if the Mesopotamians were borrowing the Indus script to write their own, completely different language? And this analogy just makes it all click. Think about how we might text the Hindi word for rest, which is aram, using English letters. Now, a word in English would never start with AA, right? That pattern looks weird, but it makes perfect sense if you know you're actually writing Hindi. The Mesopotamians were probably doing the exact same thing, using Indus symbols to spell out their own words, creating these weird patterns that gave the game away. So the script is one heck of a puzzle. But believe it or not, when we look at the society that actually created it, the mysteries only get deeper. Their cities show us a civilization that was unlike any other in the ancient world. I mean, their city planning was just mind-blowing. They had brick houses, multiple stories high, with indoor toilets and these super sophisticated drainage systems. They had public wells, even dustbins. But what's truly shocking is what's missing. There are no giant palaces for kings, no royal tombs like the Pyramids, no massive temples for priests, and zero, and I mean zero, evidence of an army or any kind of warfare. So what does all this add up to? All the evidence points to a civilization that cared more about public well-being than it did about power or gods. They seem to have built this incredibly peaceful, prosperous, and weirdly equal society. It's a huge contrast to the god kings and giant empires of Egypt and Mesopotamia. Which brings us to our second giant mystery. If they were so advanced, so peaceful, and so successful for so long, where did they all go? Well, the archaeological record shows this really rapid decline starting around 1900 BC. All that amazing city planning and maintenance just grinds to a halt. The Great Bath at one of their biggest cities, Mohenjo-Daro, was literally filled with garbage. Trade with Mesopotamia stopped, and by 1800 BC, most of these great cities were just empty. Their unique script, totally forgotten. So what happened? Well, there are three main theories on the table. First, climate change. The river that was basically their lifeline might have dried up or changed course, forcing everyone to leave. Second, environmental collapse. Maybe they cut down too many trees for fuel and farming and ended up destroying their own ecosystem. And third, a deadly disease. Some kind of plague, like malaria or cholera, could have just swept through their crowded cities and wiped them out. But that's the thing. At the end of the day, these are just theories. The hard truth is, we just don't know for sure. The final chapter of the Indus Valley Civilization is, for now, a completely blank page. And just let this sink in for a moment. This civilization was around for at least 5,000 years. To put that in perspective, that is more than double the entire history of what we consider Western civilization, all the way from the Roman Empire to today. Double. They built a world centered on peace and public good that lasted for millennia, only to disappear without a trace. So as we look at their silent, empty cities, the real question isn't just about what happened to them, it's about us. It makes you wonder, what can their silent ruins teach us about our own civilization?